Good morning, Oman. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us on time and even early today. We are thrilled to welcome you all for this workshop. As we are waiting for the participants to arrive, you can already open the chat box and you will see that my colleague already shared some useful information for you there. You can greet us, tell us your name and the institution that you represent, which will help our course leaders to know who is in the room today. We will be waiting 2 more minutes before we start our workshop. Most welcome, everyone. Great. So as I said, you can put your name and the institution that you represent into the chat box. This will help our course leaders to know who is in the room today. Thank you. Okay. So thank you all for joining us. My name is Roy, and I'm heading the business development at Knowledge E, the provider of today's session. We are about to start our workshop called How to Publish and Promote Your Research, delivered by my colleagues Emily, Karen, and Mohammed. As you all know, getting academic research published can be hard, and many academics must meet institutional publishing quotas while facing time and funding constraints. To address these issues, Masada is collaborating with the Knowledge E team to host today's webinar offering expert advice on how to publish and promote your research. So after attending the webinar, you will be able to answer the following questions. What do editors want? How can you identify and avoid publishers that are predatory? How can you effectively promote research on social media? Of course, before we start, while we're still waiting for all the participants to join us, I would like to thank our partner Masader, especially Dr. Hisham, who helped us organize this event. We will be waiting a few more minutes before we start our presentation now. Most welcome, everyone. So as I mentioned before, you can name your name and institution that you represent in the chat box. So we'll be waiting 1 more minute before we start today's workshop. Good. Great to see you all. Thank you so much for joining. Yes, indeed. Most welcome. Okay. So for everyone who has recently joined us, my name is Roy, and I'm heading the business development at Knowledge E, the provider of today's session. We are about to start our workshop called How to Publish and Promote Your Research, delivered by my colleagues Emily, Karen, and Mohammed. As you all know, getting academic research published can be hard, and many academics must meet institutional publishing quotas while facing time and funding constraints. To address these issues, Masades is collaborating with Knowledge E team to host today's webinar, offering expert advice on how to publish and promote your research. After attending this webinar, you'll be able to answer the following questions. What do editors want? How can you identify and avoid publishers that are predatory? How can you effectively promote research on social media? Of course, before we start, and while we are still waiting for all the participants to join us, I would like to thank our partner, Masader, and especially Dr. Hisham, who helped us organize this event. So we can move to the next slide, please. I would like to introduce the support team, our project managers, Lori and Sophie, who will be assisting us today delivering this webinar. Next slide, please. So I would like to remind you all of the housekeeping principles that we will follow today. So first of all, we would recommend you to keep the video on top of your screen, and if you can, the presentation itself in full screen. As usual, you can access the Zoom features at the bottom of your screen. You can move the windows, decide to display the slide presentation in full screen, which we recommend, and organize the windows as it is most convenient for you. And kindly note that if you complete the feedback form, you will receive access to a recording on predatory publishers in Arabic, delivered by our colleague, Mohammed. During the presentation, you can raise your hand to tell us if one of our course leaders is talking too fast. So we are actually referring to the Zoom function, what you will see on the lower side of your screen. Today, we are in a webinar format. It means that you'll be muted during the presentation. But of course, we will make sure that you can interact with our course leaders in different ways. You can switch the slide, Emily. You can, of course, use the chat box. We will ask you to use the chat box for greetings at the beginning of the sessions, like we just did, and during the workshop, to mention any technical issues that you may experience. Sophie will also share on the chat box some useful information, as she has already done. And the Q&A box is there to welcome your questions related to the content. Please feel free to ask questions during the workshop, and we will stop several times during the presentation to read some of your questions to the course leaders. If we have time, at the end of the presentation, we will host a longer question break where we will allow you to ask directly your questions to our course leaders. Please switch the slide. So I would like to take the opportunity to introduce you to Knowledge E. Can move to the next slide. Knowledge E works at the heart of the global knowledge economy by supporting nations, institutions, corporations, and individuals in becoming knowledge-based and innovation-driven leaders. To realize our vision of a more knowledgeable world, Knowledge E is working towards better discovery, development, and dissemination of scholarly content. We are headquartered in beautiful Dubai, and we operate in the Middle East. We do most of our work across the MENA region. So what we do as Knowledge E is we support higher education and research institutes. And essentially our bread and butter is supporting academia in emerging knowledge economies. To do that, we have what we call the 3D approach, which we cover in three main divisions. Discover, we help institutions discover by providing content from the world's top publishing houses while enabling smooth and reliable access and discoverability through our technology platform and services. Develop. This is actually the training and consulting division. We develop the community by delivering bespoke training programs designed to foster high-performance knowledge societies. So we provide consultancy services, serving universities on their mission to become world-class universities, enhancing their research capabilities, supporting with rankings, etc. Disseminate. This is the last part of the business where we focus on helping researchers to be published. We support the research community to disseminate content through our open access platform, publishing journals and conference proceedings, enabling them to share their findings with the rest of the globes. So this is Knowledge E in a nutshell. We can go to the next slide, please. Now, I would like to say a few words about our partner, Masale. As part of building the necessary awareness In Oman, Knowledge E is collaborating with Masada to host today's webinar offering expert advice on how to publish and promote your research. Masada uses modern digital library technologies to advance research, learning, innovation, and the public good. Our aspiration is to make a meaningful contribution to realizing Oman's 2040, where research, technology, and innovation form the basis of a productive and competitive knowledge-based economy. So this is what Masada does. Next slide, please. So now you will find the agenda. Next slide, please. On what do editors want, delivered by our course leader, Emily, how to avoid predatory publishers by our course leader, Mohammed, and how to do research promotion with social media by our course leader, Karen. Without further delay, and thank you so much for joining us today, please allow me to introduce our first presenter, Emily.
So, a little bit about me. I'm head of publishing at Knowledge E. Apologies for a second, I'm having a slight hiccup. There we go. So I'm head of publishing at Knowledge E, where we host and publish, as Roy said, open access academic journals and offer a wide variety of publishing services. I also have experience editing a Scopus Index literature journal, and as an independent scholar, I've published multiple articles and book chapters. My field is 19th century English literature. So as academics, we devote hours and hours of our lives to conducting research and writing it up. And this can take months, even years sometimes. And this cartoon is one of my favorites because I have this conversation with my husband quite a lot, or variations of this. Because as we know, researching and writing academic research and then publishing it takes such a long time. And when you finally finish the article, submit it to a journal, you then have to wait months and months for a response. I submitted an article a few months ago and got the automatic response that they will not respond for 12 months, which is a really long time. Then if you get a rejection, and unfortunately that does happen to everyone at some point in their career, you have to start the whole process all over again. So it's extremely important to know what editors want and how to give it to them. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. What editors want, and more importantly, what you should look for as an academic author when submitting an article. Because it's not all about them. It's also about you and your research. You have created something unique and valuable. It might only be to a very small number of people, but it is valuable. So don't throw it away to the first publisher who approaches you, because sometimes they're only interested in your money and won't give you the service and support you have earned. And that's something my colleague Mohammed will talk about shortly. Ultimately, by publishing in the wrong place, your research will not get the recognition it deserves. So that's going to be the two halves of my talk today, what editors want and what you should demand from them. So before I tell you what I think, I'd like to know a little bit about what you think. So I want to do just a quick interactive game on Mentimeter. So if you could click on the link, which my colleague will have put in the chat box, and then enter this code down here. I just want you to enter a couple of words to find out what you think. And I'm going to do it myself as well to kind of get us all started. So what do I think editors are looking for? Strong argument. Oh, can't spell argument. Originality. I'm going to put those two as my ones. You can submit as many answers as you want. So if I go back to the slides, if we go through to the next one, I'm going to start showing the results now, and I hope some of you will have contributed. because this is nice, and it helps me to see what you all think. Oh, great, loads of stuff. Genuine work, yeah, innovation, so important. Relevance, thank you. Relevance is so important, and I'm going to discuss that more in a few minutes, because unfortunately it can be the most amazing piece of research, but if it's not relevant to the rest of the academic community, it's nothing. Quality, yes. Validity, again, really good. Clear writing, thank you. Because my background's in English literature, clear writing is so important to me. Region-specific research, that's a really interesting one. And yes, it is so important for some journals. Obviously not all of them, but depending on your field and your speciality within that, a regional element is very, very valuable to some journals, I agree. Any others? Anyone else? No? I'll carry on then for now. Oh, if I can. So, carrying on properly, let's discuss what editors look for now that you've told me what you think they look for. So obviously what editors want, it varies from discipline to discipline and from journal to journal. Scientists want something completely different from English literature editors, for example. But there are a few core things that everyone wants, and a number of them you all kindly just entered in the Mentimeter boxes. So the first one is originality. You have to be offering something new and different to make it worthwhile to publish. I mean, that's the single most important thing, I think. The next one, thank you to whoever said relevance, is relevance to the journal and their target readership. After all, editors want their journals to be read and cited just as much as you want your article to be read and cited. So it has to be relevant to as many people as possible. And this leads to the third point, which is value to the field. And this is crucial for an editor. It isn't enough to write something new. It has to be useful to other scholars. Next, we have academic rigor. You might have the most amazing new idea or have uncovered groundbreaking material, but if you can't present it as a coherent argument supported by valid evidence and conform to international academic standards, no one will publish your discovery. And finally, impact. This is arguably what drives the engine of academia, the need to demonstrate quality and importance and contribution of research to the wider academic community. And again, this is as important for journal editors as it is for individual academics. So, I'm currently editing, well, I've actually just finished editing a special issue for a journal, the Byron Journal, which is based on papers at a conference I hosted in 2019, which seems very long ago now. So I got to hear all the papers and consider what should be expanded into articles. And in addition to everything I've just mentioned in the last slide, as the editor, I also have to think about the whole issue, not just individual articles. So I also consider the diversity of it. Is there a good balance of male and female authors? A balance of senior and junior academics, and good geographic diversity. And this is very important, even for regional or national journals, because international collaboration is not only a key metric for journal rankings, but also for university rankings. So a good editor needs to always be thinking about the bigger picture, especially if their journal is a university publication. More than anything else though, what I really want is a well-structured and well-substantiated argument. Basically, when I finish an article, I want to go, all right, yeah, I'm convinced. Works for me. So when I'm reading a submission, I always ask myself, does the author demonstrate awareness of existing research and an understanding of international academic standards through citations and references? Is there effective and sufficient use of supporting evidence to create new insights? Is the written English fluid and correct, with no repetition of phrases or arguments? And finally, is the article tightly organized with every sentence contributing to the overall argument and nothing unnecessary? And this is incredibly important because structure really is everything for an academic article. It should be like a well-tailored suit and not a baggy, shapeless t-shirt. The issue I was just editing had one article that had amazing research in it, but was so badly written. At the end of the 7,000 words, I still didn't really know what the author was trying to say, so I had to give very extensive suggestions to get them to restructure it before we could publish. Typos and formatting are also so important for editors. I cannot stress this enough. This is because they show the author knows academic best practices. And also, and this is important, because a lot of errors means a lot of work for your editors. Most academic journal editors are unpaid and they have to squeeze their editorial duties into very busy schedules, as I'm sure many of you are aware if you work within journals yourselves. The more work your article represents to the editor, the less likely they are to publish it. Your article could even be rejected if the formatting is incorrect or there are too many language issues. So always get someone else to check. Even better, try and find a friend who understands your research and is also a native speaker in that language. So I embarrassingly recently submitted an article discussing a French author and an English poet, and I'm ashamed to say that the French quotations did have quite a few errors because I'm not a native French speaker and I didn't have a nice French friend to help me. So the article was still accepted, but the editors were very unhappy about the French typos. However, if you're worried about your formatting or your language and can't find a helpful friend, there are a lot of paid services that can help. Here at K&E Publishing, for example, we offer a dedicated editing service for academic authors and institutions, helping your research get the recognition it deserves with expert copy editing and translation services. Now, giving editors what they want. This is how we get published as academic authors. And there are 4 things I think about when choosing a journal for my articles. I check the journal's submission criteria and guidelines for authors. I aim appropriately for the quality and topic of my article. I make sure the article is properly formatted for the journal and is well written with no typos. And when positioning my research and explaining its overall value, I'm tactful. So I'm just going to talk about these in a bit more detail now. It is so important to check the submission criteria for your journal. So often we get submissions at K&E Publishing for our journals which are completely unsuitable. And you only get one shot per journal. And as I've already mentioned, submission can take a very, very long time. So do you really want to waste that time submitting to a journal that will never accept your research, or one that might have accepted it if you'd followed all of their guidelines and given them everything they needed? So ask yourself, are you following their scope? Have you met all their requirements? Do you stick to their word count? There's a little room for negotiation on this, but a lot of editors will just dismiss anything that is too short or too long. So it is worth trying to stick to that one. If in doubt, are there other articles on similar topics in this journal? And how does your article compare with and engage with those items? And finally, is this the best possible version of your article? To be honest, I find reading journal scopes actually helps me think of new approaches and how to reframe my research. And these small refocusing adjustments can often improve the article so much that it makes it a million times better. Aim appropriately. I think we'd all like to be in the best journals with the highest impact factors, but it's not always possible, particularly early on in your career. So consider, try not to waste your time. Journals can take a long time on decisions, and you want to apply where you know you can get in. So don't waste time being unrealistic, but equally don't undersell yourself. It isn't enough to be published. You have to choose a reputable journal in a relevant field with a good readership. Otherwise, your article won't be read and it won't be cited, and your research may as well not have been published at all. Avoid errors. I've already stressed this, but again, cannot stress this enough. The odd error is okay, but too many is grounds for rejection. And Accuracy substantiates your credibility, whereas errors undermine it. And again, every journal has its own criteria. Journals in the same field can have lots of variations in spelling, language, formatting, and reference styles. So again, try and give them what they want. It might seem pointless to change them and it's really time consuming, but it makes such a difference to the reception of your article. This is a slightly different one. One of the most important things when submitting an article is to explain its value. Because you need to remember the editor might not be a specialist in your tiny subfield. They might be physics, but they might not be the subdiscipline within that allows them to appreciate the value of your research. So you have to use the abstract and the cover letter to clearly state what is new and important. So when you're doing this, think about these three things. The topic. Is it a new reading of a piece of literature or an interpretation of an event? Is it a development of an existing study taken in a new direction? Or is it a challenge to existing assumptions or filling a gap in scholarship? The context. What is the broader context of your research within the field and against existing scholarship? And finally, the importance. How does this research change our understanding of the topic? What new ideas does it contribute to the wider field? At the same time, when doing this, it's very important to be tactful. Don't be over-aggressive in stating your claim to originality. Your goal is to acknowledge your debt to previous studies while also demonstrating the value of your new research. And this needs to be a balance. So on the one hand, criticizing scholars in your field really aggressively is both risky, because they might be the reviewer, and bad manners. Use phrases like, I am building on, or addressing a neglected area, rather than, I am correcting the hugest mistake made by that idiot, Dr. Blah Blah. Equally, don't be too vain. You're offering a fresh insight or new data findings, or applying an established approach to a new area of research. You are not writing the most amazing piece of research that has ever been published ever, and the editor would be an idiot not to publish your work. I mean, obviously we all kind of wish we were doing that and we think it secretly, but we don't say it out loud because it's bad manners. Finally, if you're ever unsure, don't be afraid to ask the editor for their advice. They probably won't read the whole article, but a good editor won't mind looking at the abstract and saying whether it's relevant or not for their journal. This might save you time and avoid frustration of rejection, but also these editors are specialists in their field, so they might know another journal that would be a better fit for you. And as I said before, if in doubt about anything, do always just check the other journals, the other articles in the journal, because it's so helpful. However, while considering what the editor wants is important, it is also so important to consider what you want and what you need. Things to consider include the suitability of the journal. Does it match your needs? The readership of the journal. Will your article be read and cited in that journal? Time constraints. As I mentioned, journals can take a long time to publish. Is the timing working for you and your job goals? The impact factor. Do you have particular requirements and does the journal meet them? The cost. Increasingly with open access, there are costs. So is there an article processing fee, or do you have to pay for images to be included, and can you afford it? And finally, accessibility. Is the journal open access or subscription based, and does this matter to you? Now, I don't have to worry about a lot of things because I'm an independent scholar, so I research and publish for pleasure. If a journal website says it takes 12 months to respond, I don't really mind. If I want to publish in a chapter in an edited collection instead of a Scopus Index journal, it doesn't really matter. It's up to me. The only things I worry about are, will my research be accepted and will it be read? But it's different for you as professional academics. Some of you have time constraints and quotas to fill from your funders or your universities. Others need to publish to get a job or to advance to the next stage of their career. And some of you also have to publish in specific journals or in specific indexes to qualify for funding. Therefore, it's really important that you choose your journal carefully. It isn't just about being published. It's about being published in the right place for you. So just a little example. When I was studying for my PhD, Edinburgh University launched a new journal. And I submitted an article which was accepted, and I was incredibly excited because it was my first article and I was still a postgrad, and it was just amazing. But in reality, while exciting, it wasn't a very good career move because the journal was new and unproven. They accepted an article that sadly wasn't as good as it should have been. And ultimately, although the journal is still going, my article has only been cited twice in the past 8 years. Embarrassingly. So always think carefully before you submit. Journals can take a long time, and your time is very valuable. Is your research a good fit? Will it be read in the journal? Is the turnaround time okay for you? Does it meet your institution's criteria for publication? Can you afford it? And also, have you already published in this journal? Because if so, you might want to try somewhere else. A broader CV looks better. Now, sometimes finding the right journal can seem really difficult, but there are loads of places you can look. Calls for papers on Twitter, university email lists, association announcements, and dedicated internet sites are a great source. Look at citations in your article. Are any of them publishing in journals that you could apply to? And remember to look for that relevant niche, where you have better chances of acceptance and readership. And finally, remember, indexing isn't everything. Sometimes it's better to publish in a journal that isn't indexed in a big, flashy Scopus place, but is highly relevant, highly niche, and has a really strong readership in your field. And remember to change your article to fit the scope. Very important. It won't be accepted otherwise. However, if finding the right journal and making your article match its requirements is too much work, you don't have time, it just seems a bit too stressful, there are again paid services which can help. For example, our author services will help selecting the journal, submitting the journal, and also do sort of a technical peer review to identify the strengths and weaknesses and help you improve your article. Also, it doesn't have to be a journal. There's so many other places you can publish, particularly at the start of your career, to get your name out there. Book chapters are great, sometimes less prestigious, but they get your name in print, and they often, if it's got a big name editor and a good publisher, it's really valuable to your career. Short notes, conference reports, book reviews, all of these help your name get out there and forge a connection with journal editors, which is really valuable. Peer reviewing, obviously your work isn't published, but it offers great insights into what a journal wants. And increasingly, a number of journals are offering credit via platforms such as Publons for peer reviewing work. So again, it's really useful for you. And finally, as Karen will highlight in her talk, academic blog posts can be a great way to start building up your name and engaging with other academics in your field. Finally, remember that rejection can be useful. Peer review might seem harsh and unfair, but it is the best source of advice for an author. I just got an article accepted last week with major revisions, so obviously a lot of work needed, but the information that I've been given is incredibly valuable from leaders in my field, and I'm so thrilled and grateful to have their input, even though I now need to tear my article to shreds and start again. Because that's what you get. You get valuable advice from experts with new perspectives. And more importantly, it ensures you do publish in a suitable publication, and that when you publish, the article published is the best possible version that you can create. Nothing like my old article in Forum, which now I cringe whenever I see. So finally, be polite, be proactive, and be positive. It can take a long time to get something published, and sometimes you just want to throw the whole thing in the bin. But remember, you are working on research that will make a valuable contribution to your subject field. It might take time, you might need to write it 100 times to get it perfect, but your research will be published in a good journal eventually. Thank you.
very much. Thank you very much.
Q&A.
All right.
Is your speaker on?
Yeah, I need to.
Hello.
Hold on just a second, Lori.
I need to mute turn my speaker off. No, my speaker.
Yeah, turn your speaker off and your microphone off.
So now it seems that we have a sound problem because we cannot hear anyone from the course on the course leader side. So sorry, participant, for this little technical issue. So
Can you hear us now, Lori?
we can hear you now. Thank you, Karen.
Sorry about that. Minor technical
Sorry about that. So we did receive a few questions during your presentation, Emily. So if you allow me, I would like to read some to you. So the first question that we receive is how to find a reputable journal to publish your paper. So I think that's kind of a general one.
So there's, as I said in my almost final slide, there's so many places to look. So when I start,
I'm so sorry, but it seems that we can't hear you properly.
That's his microphone.
Sorry, we're having to swap slightly.
No, there is. I'm so sorry that we have a little sound problem. As you can hear, there is an echo.
Shouldn't be. Yeah. I think so. Is that okay now, Laurie?
Yes, I think it's clear now.
Yeah. So sorry, everyone, about that. The social distancing elements make things a little harder with laptops. So, as I was mentioning, there's so many places you can look. One of the first things I do when I write an article, I tend to write it first, and then I start thinking about where to publish it. And the first place I look is the list of my own references. A lot of the time there might be a journal in there that's relevant, so I start with that. Also, I tend to look for, because of the nature of my field, literature, there's an awful lot of very, very, very niche journals for us. So if I'm writing about a particular poet or a particular author, there will be a journal on that author. So I look at those and see if any of those are suitable. And then I look more broadly. So the two articles that I've just had accepted are broader. One's 19th century French literature and one's 18th century English literature journals. So again, I look for journals in my field. I type in online 18th century journal, but I also look for, back through my own research, even quotes that I haven't used and sources that I haven't used. So the journals that I've already researched in myself tend to be the first places I look. But as also on top of that, as I was saying in one of my final slides, there are calls for papers everywhere. And so often there's big websites. If you type in call for papers, there are huge websites that collect all of the calls for papers for everything. And that's a really great resource. And also, individual journals will publish things. Twitter, hashtag call for papers, like a hashtag in CFP gets really good responses. And I register for a lot of lists, emails and associations in my own field. So the British Association of Romanticism, the North American Society for Romantic Studies, areas like that are my field, because they send out all the big calls for papers, and all journals publish there as well and list requirements. So that would be the first two. But also, as I said, there are also paid services such as we offer, where an author can send an article to us. I'm not just pitching Kearney Publishing, unfortunately other companies also offer this, but you can send an article to us or another company that offers a service, and we get experts in the field. So if it was literature, it would be published professors in that field would look at the article and make suggestions. So they don't just make suggestions about how to improve the article, but they also make suggestions about, they'll suggest 5 or 6 journals that it could be published in accordance with your own criteria. So if you said it needs to be Scopus indexed, it needs to be open access, and I need to have a fast publication turnaround time, these services would facilitate that. Sorry, that was quite a large question, so I'll hand back to you, Laurie.
I have a few more questions to ask you, so if you allow me. One of the participants is seeking your opinion on publishing paper in new journal from reputed database such as Elsevier or Emerald, So he would like to seek your opinion, or he or she would like to seek your opinion on this.
I mean, if it's a new journal, I don't think there's a problem publishing in a new journal, particularly as a new, like an early career scholar. Publishing in a new journal can be a very good career move, because longer term, when the journal's more established and does get indexed in 5 years' time, your article's already been there from the beginning. So you're then in an indexed journal, which is great. Obviously, there are sometimes risks because it might not survive. It doesn't have that established readership yet. So I would say it depends on the publisher. It's really important about publisher, because the other pro is if it's in the very, very new journal, like the first 4 or 5 issues, you get the benefit of all of their really strong marketing activity, which again is really good for you. And they might be grateful. There's a chance for a long-term collaboration. You might get to join the editorial board. But again, the other flip side is they might be predatory, and my colleague Mohammed will talk about that shortly. So I think it's really important. It depends on the publisher, basically. And if you trust the publisher, if you know the editorial board leaders in your field, then I would say go ahead with it. If they're asking ludicrous amounts of money and you've never heard of them before, then maybe think again.
All right, thank you very much. No, another question is, do you give more importance to language or content in the article when you want to publish, in the view of the person who is reviewing?
Sorry, I missed the first part. More importance in what content?
Language or the content?
Image or language?
Language.
I mean, the content is obviously the most important thing, because that's the original research. The language can be edited, the language can be improved. It depends on the discipline. So for English literature, language is very, very important, because what I, as an academic author, am doing is discussing the author's use of language. So if I can't use it appropriately, it undermines my credibility, but that's less important in other disciplines. And also you can get editing services. Either the journals, some journals provide them for free, or they ask their authors to purchase them. So content, definitely content, but within content, structure as well. So there's the originality, but it's not enough to just throw all the content on the page and hope that the editor understands what you're saying and the importance. It's got to be, as I said, it's got to be like a nicely tailored suit, really well structured, really well reasoned, so that the editors appreciate the value of what you're saying.
All right, thank you very much. We received many other questions, but I think it's time now to start Mohammed's part. So I will keep some of these questions, and we will ask them during the other question break that we have at the end, which will be a longer question break. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So my name is Mohammed Mustafa. I am publishing editor at Knowledge E. I am also Crossref ambassador for the Middle East region. So today I'm going to talk about one of the hot and important topics in the scholarly and academic publishing industry, the predatory publishing. So the definition of the predatory publishing is an academic publishing business model that involves charging publication fees or article processing. It charges EPCs to author without checking articles for quality and legitimacy, which is the peer review process, and also without providing the other editorial and publishing services that proper academic journals and the publishers will provide. We'll explain the definition and these points in details later. So this is the clear definition of the predatory publishing practices. So how we can identify and recognize these predatory journals? So we have three main aspects. The first aspect is the editorial and editor practices. So the first point here that we have is within these predatory journals, usually publisher equal editor. So what we mean here is these kind of journals will not perform proper peer review process for all the submitted manuscript. And as has been highlighted by my colleague Emily, peer review process is very important, and it's like the quality control for the quality of the academic content that you want to publish. So what we found is for the predatory journals, they will not have proper peer review process within their workflow. Also, the second point here is the editorial board members. So usually for these predatory journals and publishers, this journal will have few names listed at the web page as the editorial board member. However, the scope of the journal will be very, very wide. So for example, International Journal of Physics. And when you go and check the editorial board for the International Journal of Physics, you will find around 6 or 7 editorial board members listed there. So this point can highlight or reflect the quality of the journal as well. The third point that we have is the geographical diversity and scope. So this is very, very important factor that can help you in recognizing and identifying the predatory journals. It's very important to check the scope and the geographical diversity of the journals, because what these predatory journals will do, they will play the trick to always use the word international in the journal title, or they will be affiliated to like leading countries in a specific research. So for example, they will claim that this is the American Journal of Medicine. So you as a researcher, you will be amazed, okay, I'm going to publish my research in the American Journal of Medicine. But when you go and check the editorial board of the journal, you will not find the editorial board members are affiliated to institutions or universities in the United States. When you go and check the table of content of this particular journal, you will find that the majority of the authors are coming from completely different regions. So it's very important for you to check the journal title and also the geographical diversity and the scope of the journal. The second aspect that can help you in identifying and recognizing the predatory publisher is the publisher practices. And this is very, very important aspect in recognizing them. The first point that we have is the article processing charges, or what we call APCs. The majority or almost all the predatory journals will always seek to collect as much as APCs as they can. This is the reason that they are very keen to accept all the submissions, all the submitted manuscript without performing any proper peer review to the submitted content. So try to check the information about the article processing charges. Make sure if there are any article processing charges to the journal, it will be listed very clearly at the journal website, at the author guidelines of the journal website. So you need to check that as well. The second point that we have that it can help you in recognizing the predatory journals or predatory publishers, if they will use the fake indexing claims. So these journals will always claim that they are indexed in high quality databases such as Scopus or Web of Science. So for you as an author or researcher would like to submit to a specific journal, go and check the indexing web page and also verify the information. So if the journal is claiming that they are listed in Scopus, go to the Scopus source list and check if the journal is really listed there or not. If the journal is claiming that they are listed in Web of Science, they provide a freely open access list named master journal list, so you can go there and check if this really, if really this journal has a proper impact factor issued from Clarivate Analytics or not. So you need to check and verify if the journal is really listed in these databases or not. The third point in the publisher practice is you need to publish especially with the digital publishing that we have now, and the majority of the publication is moving towards to be digital only. So you need, the publisher should have proper long-term archiving plans or policies. So you should check that in your journal and with your publisher. So the screenshot that we can see now appeared at the International Journal of Language Sciences, and all of a sudden this statement appeared at the journal website that they lost or their data, so please come back again. So make sure that your journal has proper digital preservation policy, because usually the predatory journals will not have any digital preservation policies at all. The third aspect that can help you in identifying predatory journals is the publication ethics aspect. And this is very, very important aspect. The first point that we have is the author misconduct. So usually with these type of predatory journals and the predatory publishers, they will not implement proper tools to catch any author misconduct. So usually with the proper publishers, for example, they will have tools to check the plagiarism in the content. They will have also in-house screening first before sending the manuscript to the editor or to the editor-in-chief. There are in-house checks performed by the publisher before sending the manuscript for peer review. So what we found is with these predatory journals and the publisher, they will not have these tools, or they will not implement these policies to prevent any author misconduct behavior. In some cases also, and unfortunately, these kind of publishers will republish papers that already published before. Another point is fake location, and this is one of the very important aspect. If they will always claim that they are affiliated to, like, the publisher operation will be in US or United Kingdom, but where the real operation are going elsewhere. So you need to check and try to verify the location. You can recognize that also from the type, how many journals they are publishing. Go and check and screen their journals as well. The fourth point is the poorly maintained website, and this is like kind of common feature within all the predatory journals. They will maintain very poorly websites in terms of the design, the layout of the journal. Once you land on the journal homepage, you will be able to recognize that this is a poorly maintained website where you can see a lot of pop-ups, a lot of ads for impact factor, for indexing, for call of paper. So you can recognize that this is a really poorly maintained website. You can see a lot of typos, English typos. So you can recognize that this is a really predatory journal or predatory publisher in general. The fifth point is like industry practices in terms of dealing with academic content, like assigning ISSN for journals, whether print or online ISSN. For these kind of journals also, they will not assign cross-ref DOIs, which is like a proper identifier for each article. So they will not adhere to the international publishing community standards when it comes to their operations. So you need to check these points as well. So when I publish my article, they are going to assign digital object identifier DOI for my article or not? Are they including, for example, the new community initiatives such as ORCID? So will my ORCID ID will be included in the final publication version or not? So you as a researcher, you should go through all these points and try to verify them. So here we have some screenshots and the examples for predatory journals. And as we can see, this is, for example, Journal of Arts, Science, and there is a clear typo here, Science and Commerce. And as you can see, clear typo in the journal title, which is very important. And there is something named Impact Factor GIF 0.685. I am sure now if you will go to the master journal list provided by Clarivate, and if you try to verify if Journal of Arts, Science and Commerce is listed at Web of Science or not, you will find that this journal is not listed there, and this is a completely fake impact factor. Submission ID. So as you can see, if you are interested in submitting to this journal, you need to email your manuscript to researchersworld@gmail.com. So there is no proper submission system. There is no even for the communication. There is no proper email system affiliated to these kind of journals. So all these points together can give you an idea or raise your point before submitting, or make you think before you submit your manuscript to this particular journal. The second screenshot that we have here is from the International Journal of Language Sciences. And as we highlighted before, they don't have any digital preservation policies. So they lost all their data, and they are asking the researchers and the readers to please check again soon, which is completely wrong. The third example here, and I would like you to participate and look very carefully to the image that we have here, and because we will have an activity in the next slide, and think with me what is wrong in this journal. So this is the International Journal of Emerging Technology and Advanced Engineering, and as we can see, there is ISO certificate for the journal. There is ISSN 2250. I'm not sure if this is the right ISSN or not. There is something named ISRA Impact Factor 2.324. So look clearly in this image and try to identify what is wrong or what looks predatory within this journal. So in order to participate, there are three ways. You can scan the QR code in front of you, or you can click on the link on the window, or you can go to menti.com and insert that code that you can see on the screen. And my colleagues also will post this information in the chat box. I will also participate. I can click here. Okay, what do you think is wrong with the previous journal? So I would say wrong ISSN, fake impact factor and metric. So maybe because I saw ISO certificates. So ISO certificates are not issued for journals. Fake publisher education, I'm not sure. Fake DOI prefix, submit. So now I'll go to the next slide so we can show the results. Great. So I can see the majority of the result went with the fake impact factor and the fake metric, which is very, very clear at that screenshot that we shared. This is completely right. Wrong ISSN. I verified myself this ISSN against the ISSN international database, and this is a completely fake ISSN number. So if you will check again, if you will go back to this slide, especially this point. So they are claiming to have an ISO certificate to give you an idea that we are a legitimate journal and we are credible journal, but this is completely wrong because ISO certificates are not issued for journals. There is nothing named ISRA impact factor. It's only the impact factor issued by Clarivate. So okay, now we talked about the problem, the problem and how we can identify and recognize the predatory publishers. But there is also the solution for this problem came in 2015 through an initiative named Think, Check, Submit initiative. So this initiative came by group of academic publishers and also non-profit organization in the academic community such as the Committee on Publication Ethics, COPE. So COPE is one of the leading organizations when it comes to the publication and research ethics. So all these groups came together to try to put a solution that can help the researchers to overcome this problem of the predatory journals and the publishers, and also to select the right journals to publish their research. The initiative has three main parts. The first part is the think part. So as we all know that more research is being published worldwide, and new journals also are launched each week. And we also are hearing a lot of stories about publisher deceptions and predatory activities rising every week. Also, it's very challenging now to find up-to-date guidance when choosing the right journal to publish, especially that the predatory journals and the publisher also keep changing their techniques to attract and collect as much as ABCs as they can. The core of the initiative is the checklist. So the checklist provides list of questions that you should answer before considering and submitting your journal to your manuscript to this journal. First of all, you should check with your colleagues. Are they aware with this journal? Have they published any research in this journal before or not? Try also to ask about the publisher. Ask your colleagues and ask yourself, are you aware with the publisher of this journal? Have you heard the name of the publisher of this journal before or not? Go and check the publisher webpage or the journal homepage. Are there clear information about the peer review process mentioned at the journal website? What type of peer review they are providing for all the submissions? Check the indexing services. Is this journal listed in the proper databases that you are using or not? Or even if it's a new journal, it's fine, but the publisher should mention that this is a new journal and we'll be working to index it very soon once we start publishing our content. The article processing charges or the ABCs. Go and check if the journal is providing this information in a very clear way about the publication fees. They are clear in terms of when the payment or the ABCs should be paid or not. If there are clear information also about the amount, if there are clear information there is submission fees or not. So all these information should be presented in a clear way at the journal web pages. The editorial board member, go and check the editorial board member. Are you aware with any editor listed in the editorial board member or not? So you should perform. If the journal is, for example, is claiming that it's the International Journal of blah blah blah, is really there is a diversity within the editorial board or not? So you should check this point as well. Open access and the directory of open access journals. So if the journal is using the open access model, check if the journal is listed in the DOAJ database or not, because DOAJ database is kind of quality control for the open access publications. Check in general the publisher, the whole publisher operation. If the publisher is member in the proper industry affiliations such as ISSN, Crossref, the Open Access Scholarly Publisher Association. So you need to do all these checks for the publisher. If the publisher is member, so this can give you an idea about the credibility of that publisher. The last point in this Think, Check, Submit initiative is the submit part. Always remember that publishing your research in the right journal will enhance your reputation and make you gain more citation, because your research will be more visible. Also, it will help you to raise your professional profile and make more progress in your career. Always try to that your publication and your research will be listed in good indexing services, and it will always be peer reviewed and edited. If you are feeling comfortable about all these points, then you can just click submit your research to this journal. So yeah, thank you so much, and I will hand over now to Lori if she has any questions.
And thank you very much, Mohammed. We did not receive many questions on your part, so I think I have just one here. A participant asked, usually I check in the bills list to find out whether a journal is predatory. Is that okay? So
yeah, so Bill's list is, it's a very good list, but unfortunately it's not that maintained now since Jeffrey Bell left and stopped working on it, but still it has a long list of journals and publishers that you can always check before you submit. Check if the journal name is listed there or not before you submit your research.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask, okay, if participants have any other question that they would like to ask regarding the predatory part, we can receive the question in the Q&A. So now I have another participant here. And a lot of participants actually said that you were very clear, Mo, and that was wonderful and very helpful for most of them. So just give me a moment. So is it ethical to withdraw our article if a journal fails to update the researcher on TEH status? Can you maybe open the Q&A, because the question is on the status of the article after 9-10 months. So do you want me to read again the question?
Yeah, I can see the question now. Thank you, Lori. Is it ethical to withdraw? So I think what you can do here, first of all, go to and check the author guidelines page if they are providing any information regarding the timeline of the peer review process. Go to the author guidelines web page, and if there is no information there, I would recommend emailing the journal and the editor-in-chief or the chief editor and inform them with the situation and you would like to withdraw your manuscript because they are not responding at all.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other question for you at the moment, so I think we can move to the next part of the presentation and start with Karen. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you everyone. And now I will hand over the word to my colleague, Karen. Thank you.
Okay, so about there. Nice to see everyone. Let me see if okay. Can you, all right, I think we can see me and my presentation. We're gonna talk about research promotion with social media. So my name is Karen Anderson. I'm the training and strategy expert. So here at Knology, and oops, hold on just a second. All right, so I manage quality assurance and innovation, but I also design and deliver training in library and information sciences, scholarly publishing, and interdisciplinary research. And I myself, like Emily, here you can just keep track of that, associate editor of library and information science research. So I completely support and 100% endorse everything that my colleagues Emily and Mo have said. As an editor, my experience is definitely that even if you have good research, you have to be able to follow my guidelines and have no typos and make it difficult for me to print your research, because I want to publish your research, but you want to make sure that I'm in a good position to do that. So to thank Mo and Emily, you've gone and you've followed all their guidelines, right? You think, check, attend, you follow the checklist, the editor guidelines, you publish great research, and you finally get published. All right, so you're published. Tell us, it's all done, right? We're finished. No. What if you actually want somebody to read your research and actually build on it and cite it and make a difference in the world? That is why we're going to talk about social media. So the main reason we're going to talk about promoting with social media is because the primary purpose is you want to be more visible. So I have this image here because Emily and I have had many conversations about sort of like the world of knowledge is just like a busy souk, right? And so all of the question is who can actually see you, right? So the journals are like, scholarly journals are just like a shop in this huge busy souk, but there are lots of other places for information to be. So if people are looking on the internet, they might look in this shop, but they're also end up finding things in this shop. There's topic alerts on scholarly social media. There's subject blogs. There's hashtags on Twitter. There's networks in LinkedIn. Professional associations have newsletters. There's videos and images on Instagram and YouTube. So the real question is, there's all these places drawing the attention of your researcher when they're in this big internet of knowledge, right? So if you are in your scholarly journal, particularly ones that are indexed, that's fantastic. But if you are only here, there's a whole bunch of people that are looking in these shops that'll never see you, right? So the real point is that we want to be everywhere. I know you guys are already exhausted from Emily and Mo, and you're like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do already. Come on. So none of us can be everywhere. What I want to do here is I'm going to talk to you about the reasons why. I'm going to talk to you about where and how to get engaged in social media and what that kind of engagement looks like. Okay. And the best thing for you to do is to be aware of this, to think about it, and actually start doing step by step, a little bit every week, all right, to get more engaged in this environment. So now there's basically two steps that I want to talk about. Being engaged in social media means that you can discover a lot of things for yourself, right? So you can discover more people that you can be engaged in. You discover more publications. Many of you were asking about reputable journals, but when you're engaged in social media, you can learn about a lot more publications, venues, websites, events and conferences, even learn about funding opportunities. So when you are active in exploring social media, you discover all of these things. And then the next step is to try and start connecting with people, with organizations. You can follow people, you can follow topics and get updates on those topics or those people when they publish stuff or post blog posts or Twitter tweets. You can subscribe to lists and sites to get more information, again, about all of these kinds of locations to share your information and about your research. You can comment on posts, comment on blogs, comment on articles, and many of the venues that we're going to talk about allow you to do that. You can share items of interest with other people who you've identified with the similar interests to you. And even at a very simple level, just liking relevant content is a way to connect with other researchers as well as policymakers or industry professionals that will be able to use your research. So I want to go a little bit more in detail about this relationships and tagging to build the connection to increase your visibility. So the reason I talk about contacts and connection is because that is what expands your network and gives you more opportunities to be visible in different places, right? So when it comes to relationships, like I said, just liking a post is a start, because what happens is when I post something or I tweet something, and I check to see how many people liked it, but not just how many people liked it, who liked it, right? And when I go scrolling down the list, I click on those names and I say, oh, who's that? I've never seen that name before. And I might go and look at that person and learn about their research. And then I just like, oh, you're doing this research. Fantastic. That's great. And then maybe I follow them. And when I start following them, they will follow me back, which means that anytime I post something, they will also know about it. So now you've expanded your network. Now, much more engaging than that is to actually make a substantive comment on a post, a tweet, a blog post, that sort of thing, by saying something substantial like, wow, that was really great. I learned this. It's related to my work because of that. Another way to build relationships is sharing. You can share people's posts through a share function oftentimes, but often I like to think about sharing by sending also relevant content to people. So if I, through my active social media, have identified people who do similar work to me or are in the field or are the kinds of companies or policymakers that will use my research, if I find the things that they've posted that I say, oh, they're interested in that, and I see an article somewhere else, I may just even send them an email. Hey, I read your article last week on this. I just saw this. You might know about it, but if not, I thought you might be interested. And what that does is build a relationship. They start to know your name and associate you with being informed, educated, and helpful. And occasionally, if it makes sense, you can mention your own work when you are reposting or sending content. Can you say, oh, this is fantastic. I learned this and it relates to my work on blah, blah, blah. Now, another way to engage and connect is through tagging. And I want to make sure that people understand that when you use a hashtag in Twitter, there are, and the equivalence hashtags in other domains like Instagram and places like that, that hashtag for subjects allows that there are people out there that follow those hashtags, which means that they either regularly look for them or they have set up their system to give them alerts every time something new has been posted on that hashtag, right? And so if you post information using those subject hashtags, anybody who is subscribed to that subject will also see your posts. The other thing to note about tagging is that many sites, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the scholarly academic sites, social media sites in a second, will recommend new publications to me simply based on the tags or the hashtags or the topics that I've chosen to follow. Okay, so for example, ResearchGate knows exactly what topics I'm interested in, and periodically, anytime somebody uploads new research, I get a message about it. Okay, so if you tag stuff and use those tags to discover people and make those connections through the relationship tools that I was saying on the left, then you're going to expand your network of people. So I know it seems like a lot of work, and I'm about to show you a whole bunch of places that you can explore. None of us do all of these all the time. The best that we can do is be aware of all of these pieces, and what I try to do is I designate 10 or 15 minutes each morning to look through my list, and I'll show you in a minute. And then I dedicate about an hour a week to doing exploration. Just say, okay, this is my hour of social media exploration for my professional career. Now, it's not a lot, but it also, if I'm regular about it, it helps me continue to expand my network. So what I'm going to talk about now is 4 big areas of social media that I want you to think about. So when people say social media, sometimes they just think Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and that's it. But in reality, social media is basically online media where people can be social and interact, okay? So we're going to talk about academic networks. We're going to talk about subject-based networks online, sector networks, which has to do with what is the sector of society, of industry that your research impacts or has contributes to the development of. And then there are professional networks, which are the kind of associations that many of us belong to that are specific to our disciplinary area. And there are social media in all of these areas. Now, you can choose to go deep in one and be on every academic network, but my suggestion is that you explore a little bit of all of these, because remember our big busy sook? There are shop fronts everywhere, right? So I suggest you investigate all of these. So now I'm going to go in a little bit more detail on each of them so you know what I mean. Oh, I forgot that I had my little I can't even speak English. Okay, animations to show you the different kinds of organizations associated with these networks. But don't worry, we're going to go in detail on the next slides. All right. So what do I mean by academic networks? For those of you that don't know, there's a couple of academic social media networks. Mendeley, ResearchGate, and academia.edu are places where I say self-publish, publish in the technical meaning of the word, meaning you're putting it out there, right? What it means is that authors upload their research into these websites and add keywords and targeting and things like that, tagging and things like that. But what these research sites are great for, Mendeley is a little bit more like a citation manager. ResearchGate is probably the most professional. Academia.edu has a lot of stuff in there, but they are a little bit, they act predatory, mostly because they just send me tons and tons of ads all the time, and it drives me crazy. However, there are some things, the real advantage to this is because they're so big, they often show up at the top of Google search results. And so if you also have something in these, sites, it's often your stuff may be more discoverable in the narrow field that you're in. So what I want to show you is how to use topics and alerts to find similar research. So for example, if I go on ResearchGate and I look up sports performance, so let's say I do research in sports area, sports performance, then you have this as a topic, right? And what you find is when you look at this topic, you'll find a whole bunch of different articles that are related to that topic. You'll also be able to find other experts that are focused on that, similar to you. And then when you click on their names, you can find research that they've done. And one way to find useful journals to investigate possibly for your work is even to go and look at the articles that other people have published and check the references list and see what kind of journals they were using for their references. So it's a great way to find and discover all of that information. And then if you find somebody whose research is really good, you can follow them. And if you follow them, it's very possible that they will follow you. Now, Scopus and Web of Science, of course, have some of these kinds of features, but as they are full access is very expensive. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but as also that both Emily and Mo mentioned, you want to make sure that you are up to date with your ORCID ID, because that actually connects to all of the research publications, and you can also identify authors there as well. So now I want to talk a little bit about subject networks. So what I mean by subject is, as I talked a little bit about with Twitter, there are hashtags, and Twitter has actually become very popular with academic scholars. Facebook, not so much as it used to be from an academic standpoint, but I'll get into that in a minute. So Twitter has become a great place to find academic research. Now, I just start with a person, for example, but in this person, you can see their posts on Twitter use these hashtags. And I saw this hashtag, oh, transdisciplinarity, great. So when I clicked on that, I've got a whole bunch of posts that are related to transdisciplinarity, okay? Not just, I've learned then about more people. I also have discovered organizations. I've also discovered other hashtags that I might consider using for my work. It's like, oh, they use transdisciplinarity, but they also use transdisciplinary research, or they use a bunch of other hashtags that you realize, oh, I should use those as well to find more people. Now you might think, okay, my research isn't, I don't make videos, I don't take pictures, you know, but think about it. YouTube and Instagram are often used for sharing talks or presentations, creating tutorials, sharing diagrams, and you would be surprised about how much academic content is on YouTube or Instagram, and think up for yourself, oh, is there a way that I can share my research in one way or another in this way, in a video format or in an image format, even if it's just a little bit? That just means that, remember, you're in one more of those shop windows. As many of those shop windows as you can get into, the better your chance of visibility. And then I want to talk about subject blogs. So for those of you who are still not familiar with the term blog, it's like a combination of a magazine and a website. And usually the articles are fairly brief, you know, maybe 500 to 1,000 words. Sometimes they have big long ones, but oftentimes you will find that these blogs you have them specifically from an organization, but you also have a lot that are very specific to a particular academic or disciplinary research area, or to a practice area, an industry, or a policy-making area, right? So one of the things that you can do is when you find blogs in your area, your discipline, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how to do that in a minute, you find these articles, and what's great about blogs is that they usually have the opportunity for people to comment and to like, right? So this is now another opportunity for you to make connections. You can like stuff, or better than that, if you find an article that's really interesting, that your work is related to, this is where you can make a comment and say, wow, this article was really interesting to me because it's connected to the work that I'm doing on XYZ. Now you want to be sure, and remembering back to Emily's comment about being polite and professional, you don't want to promote yourself too much unless you are definitely can make a real, intelligent, substantive connection, because then people will know, oh, when I read that person's comment, they're not just trying to throw their work out there in the hopes that everybody will read it. They actually try to connect it to the things that people are talking about. I'm also going to talk about how many blogs, particularly subject blogs, will allow guest authors. So you may be able to, if your work is very aligned with a particular subject of a blog, you may say, hey, I thought this little blog post would be of interest to your readers. And sometimes when you submit that, they will publish these guest blog posts. So that's another, again, opportunity to reach all of the people that subscribe to that blog. And then I just wanted to mention again, from a subject standpoint, in the scholarly, the academic social media sites, you have these topic alerts. So you can search for topics, but also I have it set up so that when anybody posts any content that's related to the subjects I've indicated, I actually set it up so that I get a quick email alert. And that's what I do, what I'm going to show you in a minute. Oh, let me talk about sectors. About what I do is I check those emails, really just the headlines, to see what new is coming in. All right, so the third area that I wanted to talk about was sector networks. And there's not really a good word for it, but what I mean is, okay, are you in education? Are you in mining? And I don't just mean discipline, I really mean, what is the area of the world in practice that actually is going to leverage your research to make their industry better, okay? Now, the reason you also want to think about this is long-term impact for your research. Now, I know if you are publishing your research just in order to be published in the right place to get tenure, then halas, you didn't need to even listen to this presentation from me. But if you are actually trying to get people to actually use your research to make an impact in the world, you should care about the industries that are going to ultimately benefit from your work. So there's many professional organizations that have blogs that are subject-based or based on that the association. So the RAND Corporation does lots of public policy research, but they have individual blogs around things like terrorism. But the aerospace and defense industries, they have their own blog that covers a range of stuff in the aerospace and defense industries. But there are many other types of publications, newsletters, and practitioner journals. So for example, if you're involved in public health, if you keep track, there's the LEPH Conference on Law Enforcement and Public Health is its own conference, but it also has alerts that you can investigate and to be reminded when you get new information. And it's always a great place to discover other people. If you're in education, for example, the Chronicle of Higher Education is about higher education. It's not a research journal, but that allows for lots of commenting, and they often do posts or articles about the latest research. Mining Journal is another example. It's a practitioner journal, but with an online environment that allows you to comment and share research that might be of use. And then finally, most industry organizations or journals like this also have accounts or pages or channels in social media that are worth following, sometimes to find more interesting hashtags or other authors, or see how they present research, so that if you want to present yours in that environment, you can see an example of, oh, this is how they would allow me to present my research and to make it useful. And then finally is the professional networks. So by this, what I really mean is our, Association of Biomedical Engineers, right? So it's not the industry that's making use of biomedicine, right? It's those of us who are biomedical engineers and doing that kind of research. And most of those professional networks and industry organizations have LinkedIn presence and also a Facebook presence, but LinkedIn is more professional. And what I wanted to show you here is that when you investigate a person or an organization on LinkedIn, you have the opportunity to see what their interests are and discover other associations or people that might be useful for you to also connect with or follow. And then when it comes to Facebook, Facebook has become much more of a personal social media than a professional or an academic one. But like I said, most of the big industry or professional organizations also have a Facebook page that it's worth at least following, and you will see that it will show up in your feed. So it's worth thinking about that as well. And another place to comment or to share content that you find there that might with others. Now, why would I want to share somebody else's content, right? Well, you make a connection. You say, oh, I just saw this interesting article on this blog and it relates to my work. So when you share it, you share their work and you connect it to your work. And then all of those people get to realize, oh, this person's really connected and they know what they're talking about. Let me look at their research. And when you share somebody else's stuff, then they'll come and look at you. Oh, who's sharing my work? Oh, I'd never heard of this person. Oh, wow, look at their research. Oh, that's great. I'm going to share that also. So you see how it grows. All right, so just as a little reminder here, so what we want to do is first you want to go in and explore and create these different accounts if you don't have them already. Dedicate a little bit of time to finding experts in your field. All of these areas, all of these 4 types of networks, you can find experts in your own field, academic or industry. You can find subject and topic blogs, hashtags, and other groups that may be related to you. You find associations, academic or professional associations. This is ministries or departments or elected officials that actually are in your area of expertise. Also think about finding think tanks or public policy nonprofits if your research has a policy impact, because following these groups always try to stay on top of what the research is and be a link between research and policy. So they're good to follow there. And this is where I just wanted to give you this little tip about one of the things that I do when I set up my alerts or I subscribe to discussion lists or newsletters from different organizations is that I set up my email so that it displays the subject on one line, and every morning this is what I do. I go through and I spend 10 or 15 minutes just quickly reading the headlines. You're going to say, I can't read 20 emails. I already have huge amounts of emails. I don't read them. I just look at the headlines, and it does two things. One, it keeps me up to date on what's going on in the world. And one or maybe 2 or 3 out of 20 are right in my subject area. And I would open and click on the link and go there. And then that's an opportunity for me to share something back, or to comment, or to like, or to send some information to the author going, wow, I loved this thing. You might be interested in this other thing. Honestly, that 10 or 15 minutes, mostly, I just look through them all real quickly. Maybe I click on 1 or 2. So think about that. You don't have to do everything all the way 100%, read every last detail. Think about ways that you can do this in a quick way. So after you find and follow, again, it's about communicating and connecting. So I just have 2 more slides of tips that I want to give you on the communication process. So first is tips on commenting and sharing. Okay, so when you're commenting or resharing or reposting, or you're sharing information with somebody because they're a great scholar and you want them to be aware of you, but you've got nothing to say, but you found an article or research that you think they would be relevant to them, even if it's not your own, you want to make sure that when you reach out or respond, that you're positive, that you're specific and personal. So for example, type of commenting, thank you for this post, your discussion of blah, 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 opened my mind to a new way of thinking about whatever it is you're thinking about, right? Or I thought of you when I saw this article, right? 2, connect to the current events or your knowledge, or both. Okay, so that's another way, again, to make the connection. Your article or post is really relevant to me right now because I'm working on XYZ, right? Add a useful reference, because again, whenever you're commenting or sharing, people love to have you say how great they are, right? And how you're, but that's when for them to know what your value is, if you share something useful with them, then they not only feel like, oh, this person likes me, but oh, they're actually intelligent enough to connect my work with something that's current going on or somebody else's research. And they're also giving me stuff that they think I will find useful. And so now I'm valuable to them in 3 ways, and they're much more likely to follow me back or investigate my own research for the future. So again, the more people you're visible to, the more chances people will say, oh, I saw this person, I saw Karen Anderson's article on this blog post the other day. I know you've never heard of her, but I just saw she's liked a bunch of my stuff, and I think so they may share with somebody you don't even know. So that's partly what visibility is about. It's also useful when you're commenting to ask a stimulating question to keep the conversation going, which is developing a relationship even further. So think about that when you're thinking about commenting or sharing with people. And then, as I mentioned before, and Emily also mentioned that blogs were a great way to also expand your reach of your research, either of your published research or of research that you haven't had published yet, but also to get your name out there on topics you're an expert on. So if you're going to write a draft blog post, just like with journals, read the blogs, read a bunch of the posts to see what is the style that they use. They may not have guidelines, but if you see that you can write your post about your work in a way that is similar to the others, you would have more of a chance of them saying, oh, wow, that was perfect. That's just like something that would be on our blog. But the basic tips are, have a simple, clear, interesting headline or subject area. Open with a current event and how your research topic connects. Very brief description of your research if you're mentioning it. Now remember, if this is a blog post, it's not just like, they're not going to say, okay, here's another piece of research you should read. Here's another piece of research you should read. The blog posts, if you read them, will show you why that research is useful to that field, okay? But you don't want to then spend 20 paragraphs describing your research. You got to learn how to do it briefly, okay? Brief description, and more importantly, a brief description of how the knowledge from your research can be used to solve problems in the world, because that is where people are really going to build, and your research is really going to have an impact. So you want to describe for people, here's how you can actually make a difference with my research. That's when they're going to cite you and use your work to change the world. And then finally, it's always useful in a post to, if you've referenced other things, to include some research or other useful tools. Remember, to be useful yourself, not just advertising yourself is great, but actually to contribute to the field, to the conversation, to the other person in your connection. So then you can have comments from these posts. So again, not all blogs do, but many, if you write a post like this that's concise, that matches what that blog is doing, then it's a great way for you to be able to share, again, your research with a larger audience. Okay, so basically, I gave you like this super fast version and just touched on the things you need to investigate further. So please investigate the different tools. Carve out, even if it's 30 minutes a week, just say, okay, this is my social media time this week, and I'm just gonna do what I can do, set a timer for 30 minutes and do what you can do. And slowly over time, I guarantee you, you will expand. And if you really have no idea about social media, ask a teenager in your life. They will show you how it works. Then, of course, once you start getting familiar and discovering people, learn how to communicate in the social media environment and how to connect. Begin building your networks to increase your impact. So, I know I saw a number of raised hands there. I know I talk super fast. So it's very possible, Lori, that we may have questions from people going, what did she say? But you've all been very patient. So, Lori, if you have some questions, I am be more than happy to answer them. Yes, and then we can, if you want to just start with a few questions on social media stuff, great. And then we just can bleed right into getting back some of the other questions we had on the other topics. Yeah.
Well, we received a few during your presentation. Some are linked to what you were explaining, some a little bit less, some sometimes also about promotion. And one that came here was linked to data publication or promotion. So the participant asked, when submitting data for publication or after publication, is it possible to use some of this information in a poster or other form of publication or promotion?
Okay, that's a fantastic question. Mostly, I think it's fantastic because I'm a data geek and I love data, and I am a big advocate of people sharing their research data. So there's two pieces to your question, because it depends where your data is published. So if your data is published in association with an article that's published by a reputable peer-reviewed journal, there will probably be guidelines from the publisher on what is shareable. What they will do is they will share your data in association with that article. But for example, if it's not an open access article, they might not be willing to, that data, nobody's going to be able to find it if it's associated with that article. Or if you want to share your research data with the published article, read the guidelines with the publisher agreement carefully and say, I am willing to share my data, but only if you let me share it from my own location, so that the data can be, I want all scientists to be able to access my data. You can have your copyright on my research article, but you need to let me share my data openly. So you just need to make sure that you have an understanding with the publisher about that relationship with your data, which is related to but separated from your article. So then on to the next piece. So let's say your data is available, you can share your data, it's totally open, and you found a way to do that that doesn't get in the way of your publishing agreements, then yes, you can absolutely and should use all of these social media methods for sharing even just your data. And what you want to do though, again, is think about what are the things that I said. If you're sharing stuff, right, and posting about it, you want to make sure that it's clear to other people what it is and how it's useful. right? So if you want to share that data to say, okay, there's an article over here, but this is research that I've been doing, and I'm willing to share my data with the world in order to help other people build on my data. If you're going to do that though, sorry, we're going to take a time out for a data geek librarian moment. Make sure your data that you're sharing is really well organized with a good data dictionary and clear organization and structure, so that if other people are going to use it or build on it, it's clear what they can do with it, right? But there are also academic quasi-social media sites for sharing data also. So they're like data repositories. And if you search for that in your subject area, there'll be data repositories that you can, and of course, in the excitement of the moment, the names of the big ones are escaping me. But if you look it up and say data sharing in your subject area, you should find some.
All right, thank you very much, Karen. That was very detailed. Another question that come, and it's linked also to what you've been discussing, is before sending the manuscript for peer review in order to be published, is it okay to publish a part of our work on ResearchGate or blog post? What do you think about that?
That is an excellent, excellent question. So here's what I would say. It depends what the importance of that publication is for you, okay? Because if you've published it, if you've uploaded it and shared it on ResearchGate in the same type of form that you're submitting to the journal, the journal won't publish it, because most journals want to publish stuff that has not been published elsewhere. So if it's important to publish in a research journal, absolutely don't want to share it anywhere else. However, this is also another example of, once you get accepted by a journal, then you can talk to them about, okay, well, can I share this on my ResearchGate page? And what they might say is, you can share the article, but just the metadata, and nobody can be able to access the full text. They have to access it from us. So it still means it's findable on ResearchGate. It just means people can't access the full text. But I strongly recommend that you are careful about sharing stuff on ResearchGate or academia or Mendeley or any of those, or data repositories, if it's a big piece of something you want to get published in a peer review journal. So I would just caution about that. You can often do it later, or if you're only doing a little piece and you can demonstrate to the journal that, okay, the article is about this whole thing, and what the whole article is completely unique. This has just been published somewhere else. But you want to think about it. You want to think about it depending on your goals.
Thank you. Another question, is it safe to upload data on Mendeley? Of course, the participant is saying that he has been doing it, but can you give us your opinion on that?
Well, define safe. So in terms of, look, if it's your data, you can do with it whatever you want to do with it. It's just how it affects other people. Now, ideally, what you want to do, if you're sharing it on Mendeley, for example, you want to actually make your own statement that if you're sharing this because you want other people to build on it, which is great, or you're sharing it so that particularly peer reviewers can actually verify that the research you said you did is actually borne out by the data, that's going to be important. But safe, if you don't want anybody to use your data, then obviously you're not going to share it. And so it's safe in that sense. It's really a matter of, in terms of having other people use it, if you put a disclaimer at the top of the document or the files that say, I'm sharing this for other use, but it can't be used for commercial purposes, for example, investigating a Creative Commons license, there's not much you can do about other people using your data in a way that you don't want, but if you find it out, you have legal recourse to sue them or make them cease and desist. So it's really a balance of your getting credibility versus sharing your science with the world to advance knowledge.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Karen. I think now we are moving to some topics that are a little bit more mixed, but I think this one you will probably be able to answer. Can you provide more advice on how to connect with international researcher where we want to, for participants who want to collaborate or be co-author?
Great. So I will speak to that from I think that's probably the best for me also, is that by becoming active in social media, you begin to discover, you saw a number of my slides where it's like, oh, if you go to a Twitter page or a LinkedIn page for a particular association, or even an article, and you can click on a name, you can find different names of people who are in the field. And honestly, by beginning to explore and reach out in the whole web of social media, you can discover a lot of authors, and then you can read their work and discover who's relevant. And then by even just beginning that communication in social media, by liking their work or making a comment or sharing something with them, you start those relationships in very small ways. So I think that's a fantastic way of getting involved with others, developing those relationships. But again, you want to collaborate with others, but you can't just, I suppose you could just send an email, hi, that's not an email. Yeah. Hi, you don't know me, but I want to collaborate with you. If you've built the relationship even through little likes and commenting before that, you have a better chance of that growing into something bigger.
If I could pick up as well,
Right.
if I could add on to that, I think one of the few advantages of what's happened since COVID hit last year has been the huge uptick in online conferences. And because of online conferences and the chat functions, every event, I ran an event last week for my journal, and we had people from 40 countries turn up all around the world, and everyone was chatting in the chat function. And again, being able to attend these events, it's like Karen says, it gives you a chance to start to reach out to new people and new individuals. So that's another really good way to start to make those initial connections that you can then develop on later and send emails or follow them on Twitter or something afterwards. But it's a really great way to start to learn. We tend to be quite insular, particularly traveling to conferences. We very much as academics, we tend to, you see the same people, they're in your field, but they're in your field in your country or in your continent, and you tend not to really meet anyone outside that. So the online events, and there's so many now, is a really great way to start to develop international connections.
All right, we have a few more questions, but I think if you can talk a little bit closer from the microphone, that would be great, because we have a little bit of difficulties to hear you in the room. So a question, more general question, which of the platform is the most popular in order to put your paper?
Are you talking, do you think it's a social media platform?
This was not really mentioned by the participant, but I guess as you were talking a lot about the social media, we can answer in that direction.
Right, so I will say that from the academic media, the academic social media sites, ResearchGate would probably be the place to start. When it comes to academic, more general social media, Twitter is definitely the most popular from an academic standpoint. Those would be the ones I would mention. And Emily is nodding her, well, your video's on, so you can see you nodding your head, right? Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. What is the difference between ResearchGate and Google Scholar? Can you make that?
Sure. Absolutely. So Google Scholar is basically a search engine for scholarly material. ResearchGate is actually a network of individuals. So what Google Scholar does is searches the entire, well, a lot of the internet, and has a computer algorithm that determines what is scholarly content and lists it, right? You can, in Google Scholar, you can create alerts to follow a person and or a topic, that anytime the search engine finds anything new, that it will give you an alert. And that's a great additional thing to have in your email box, my little checklist of stuff. but there's not a way to follow people back. There's not a way to look at one person and quickly see what are all the associations and organizations that they're connected to? What other scholars do they follow that they're interested in? That's what ResearchGate or many of these other social media, even Twitter, allows you to do, is look at the person and the article and see all the things they're connected to. In Google Scholar, all you get is the name, the list of publications, and anybody who's cited that publication, and that's kind of the extent of what you get. Wouldn't you, do you have anything to add to that, you guys? Hope that helps.
I'd say I love Google Scholar. I think it's a great resource, particularly right now when a lot of us can't make it to libraries. It's incredibly useful, but that's by the by.
It's hugely useful for the content, absolutely. It's just not as good a networking tool.
Yeah, no, it's not
Yeah.
networking, it's a research tool.
All right, thank you very much. Maybe one more question. One participant is saying, sometimes we submit our good quality paper to journal, which are also online. However, due to poor organization of journal website, we do not get citation. How to overcome this issue?
I'll start with that one. I mean, I think a lot of online journals are actually, I mean, I love it being published in print. My life goal is to have a whole shelf of things with my name on it. So I can quite see why a lot of the time we tend to disparage or put down online content and assume it's the blame of the journal website or whatever. But a lot of the time it's a question of the journal itself. It might be a really, really great paper that's in a great journal, but it's not a journal whose readership is interested in the content that you're publishing. So it might be that, you know, it's the biggest engineering journal, which is great, but you're publishing on such a tiny area of engineering that there's only a tiny number of readers that are interested in that particular paper, in that content. So there's two things you can do. One, in the future, you can balance the name of the journal and the volume of general readership with a more niche journal that's really focused, so you know every single person who reads that article, reads the journal, will definitely want to read your article. That's option one. And option two is to employ all the sort of things that Karen was talking about. You know, when I publish an article, I tell people on Twitter, I tweet about it, I send the links around about, oh, look how exciting is this? Not even later, you know, with the engagement level, but just literally, my article has been published. I want to tell everyone about it in as many ways as possible. And that's really important. Also, self-citation is sometimes valuable. Now, it's very interesting study that they did a couple of years ago is that by and large, people in sciences, hard sciences, and more men tend to self-cite exponentially more than women and people in the humanities and social sciences. For some reason, outside hard sciences, we tend to feel it's rather bad manners to cite yourself. But the thing is that citing your own articles with good reason, when it's a valid reason to cite them, is a really important way, because how else is someone, you're writing research that is based on a previous piece of research you've written. You should be mentioning your article, because if someone's reading this article, they're going to be interested in that previous piece of research. So self-citation where appropriate. I mean, don't be one of those people who has 40 citations, of which 39 are your own work, because that doesn't look great. But within moderation, self-citation can be really useful. And Twitter and other forms of social media, but I have to say I find Twitter the most useful, is great. And then all of the stuff that Karen was talking about already, you know, that general sort of engagement, getting your name out there, pulling your article in if you read something relevant, all of that is hugely useful.
And I said it then, and I just want to reiterate it now. Your question was about getting cited. If in your promotion in social media and elsewhere, really good to think about including lists of how your work can be built upon. If you make it really clear about, here's how you can build on my work, then they will build on your work that way and have to cite you. So just, if that's what you're driving for, guide them there gently.
But also don't be upset if someone cites you in a disparaging way, because that does also happen. A citation is still a citation, even if they say that you're wrong.
All right, thank you very much. So one last question, maybe. So one participant is saying sometimes we need support with professional branding and social media presence, which is not always possible with the hugely busy schedule at work. A lot of time is taken up by documentation, etc., which leaves no time for any intellectual satisfying achievement. Do you have any suggestion on how we can get help on this?
Well, we do actually offer a marketing package that helps with this, so we can develop your branding for you. So that's one option, is you can come direct to us and we will work with you to do just that. Otherwise, I think it's taking the time.
Unfortunately, it does. You have to. Well, one of the ways that you can think about it is you don't have to customize and brand everything that you do. You just need to check with your institution. But ideally, most institutions should have at least a logo or phrases that they use, and just get permission to say, look, if you're promoting your own work, then just grab, again, a little bit. So even if you can't do it in the full, fancy 5-star way, do little pieces the best you can, and even ask your local research office at your institution to say, hey, look, I'm promoting my stuff. I don't have time to build all this. I'm going to do a few things. Is there, can you at least, I'd be happy to mention and link to the university if you want me to. Otherwise, you can just promote yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, also, it's one of those things, social media, you just do it in the snippets of time you have. So I had a baby last week and I'm still on social media while I'm feeding with one hand and I'm just there like, tweeting in the other hand. Because we've got a lot of free time.
She's a hardcore academic.
But
that kid is going to be spouting Byron as his first words, I guarantee you.
All right, thank you. One last question. Is there a way to get over the complicated formatting that is frequently asked by impact journals?
This is one again for us. You have to, if they're asking for it, it's because they want it. And if they want it, you're more likely to be accepted if you give it to them. That being said, again, it is very time consuming. So we offer a service where we do it for you. Obviously, there is a cost, as with all things, but there are, obviously, I don't want to be just pitching us, so there are many companies that do this, so you can look around. We are one of them, so do consider using us if you do decide to go that way. But no, there's no...
And can I just explain a little bit about why that's the case? Because it's not like we're trying to make things difficult for you. The bottom line is that every publisher and journals that the publisher publishes, they have a whole bunch of procedures in place to print things and get them online, and it costs money. And so they have developed a way of doing it that actually is streamlined because they actually do a lot of it. It's not just your article, right? It's a lot. So they have standards. If I get a manuscript that doesn't follow those standards, then I have to do one of two things. Either I have to fix it all myself, or I have to get you to fix it. And here's the thing. In order to avoid conflicts of interest, many journal editors, most of the time, are not paid at all. Not only are the peer reviewers not paid, but as editors, we're not paid, or we get teeny, tiny little, basically like, here you can have a soda once a month for all the work you're doing. So if I don't have enough time to be able to actually fix your paper for you. We all know that this makes it very challenging for authors, but I just wanted you to understand behind the scenes, this is why we ask for it, not just because we want to be difficult.
Also, on top of that, it comes back to what I was saying before. The fact is, when I get an article that's properly formatted, I know you know what you're doing. I have a higher level of trust in the quality of your research, in the quality of your academic rigor, because you delivered something to me that is properly formatted. I'm not saying I will consider you a less good academic if you send something that's not properly formatted, but you won't be top of my pile.
It shows that you have attention to detail,
You
and
know
also
what you're
that,
doing.
yeah.
And I want to know that you know what you're doing, and that shows me that you know what you're doing effectively. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we are now running out of time, so I will ask if it's possible to switch slide, and I will hand over to my colleague Roy. Just a minute.
Oh, turn my video off.
Okay, everyone. Before you leave, I would kindly ask you to complete the feedback form. And my colleague Sophie has shared the link in the chat. Once you have filled in the survey, you will receive the link to access to a shared folder with the recording on predatory publishers. I would like also to take the opportunity to remind you all that Knowledge E can support you with to develop, execute, and achieve your strategic objectives through our consulting services, to support you to implement online teaching, blended learning, and international leadership and teaching excellence. Also, maximizing impact, sustainability, and return on investment for your institution to the commercialization of research, academic entrepreneurship, and innovation. And we can also help you publish your journals, conference proceedings with our Caney publishing services, which is a globally open access platform. And we can also help you provide access to e-resources, collections from top tier publishers from one platform through our digital library solutions. And we can also help you further accelerate your university's reputation through our ranking, through our consultancy services. So thank you, Karen, Emily, Mohammed, for your presentation. It has been a great workshop, and I hope that you all enjoyed it. I would like to thank again our partner, Masader, especially Mr. Hisham, who helped us organize this event. Thank you all for joining us today. And on behalf of Masader and Knowledge E, and do please reach out to us if you have a question or you would like to speak to one of us on the email, which is shared. There is a survey. Please participate and complete the survey. We will leave the session open for 5 more minutes to make sure that you have all the access. If you need any support, please do let us know. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful day ahead, and take good care and be safe. Thank you, everyone.
All right, participant, I see that we still have 74 attendees in the room. So if you don't have any question or if you don't have any problem to access the feedback survey, you're free to leave the webinar as it is now finished. Thank you very much and have a very good day. Bye-bye.